Well, good morning, everyone. And once again, welcome to another live this morning. Hope you're having a great start to your day. And we certainly are. Oh, yeah, let me see if I can get that light out of my glasses. Nope. Would I do this? If I put my head down. Hi, Andrea. How are you? Niagara Falls. Good morning to you. You're first up on my hit parade, at least, Andrea. April. How are you? Number 2. Sandy, Fergus Falls, Minnesota. And Brahim, you're number 3. Kathy, Port Perry. Kevin. Right at the top, you guys. Surprise? Nope. Judy, New Brunswick. How are you? Elaine, St. John's, Newfoundland. Hi, Wendy from Markham. And Dave from Cardiff. Good morning. Tina, Nova Scotia. Chandra from Brampton. How are you? Nellie, good morning. Is this your first time? Let us know. Hi, Georgie, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Hi, Lise. Hi, Rosalinda from the Kidneys of Canada, Niagara Falls. Francis, Marie. Darcy, Wisconsin. Bonnie, Little Britain. Diane, how are you? Fran, Orangeville. Linda. Oh, Lindas, we love them. They listen. New Brunswick. Diane, Thunder Bay. Danny Lay, Iron Bridge. Lee's with an emoji. Hello, Dennis. I'm doing well, and thanks for asking, Dennis. Gail, how are you? Helga and Judy, Port Perry, Ontario. Rose, good morning to you. And Laurie, Cambridge. I gotta take my glasses off. Oh, I can't see without them. Marla. Cecilia. And Beverly. Good morning. Hi. Well, look at that. Nick is on with us this morning from our staff. Hi, Nick. How are you doing? Adrian. How are you? Carrie. And Bonnie from Annandale, Minnesota. Milika. Lisa Marie. Arlene. Brahim saying it's not his first time. No kidding. Gail. Mount Pearl. Amber from New Jersey. Cheryl, West Virginia. Marla from Sudbury. Good morning. First time, Marla? James. Tennessee. Chaz. Maryland. Bruno. Ann. Moncton, New Brunswick. Good morning. Marla is saying hi to Nick. And Denise, how are you? And a couple of more. Nicole, love having you on. Sue from Bolton. And Heather from Miramichi. Sylvia, good morning to you. We love you dearly. Sandy, Chilliwack, British Columbia. Cheryl, Lighthouse Cove, Nativity. Elaine, how are you? Okay, let me look at a few studies as we get going this morning. Okay, guys? Study on chronic fatigue syndrome and AIDS. Okay. They studied, of course, they've been studying chronic fatigue. I even studied chronic fatigue. Okay. I did a little clinical study. I wrote a book. I turned it into a book. And it was a very small study. We had about 500 participants that were actually diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I came to some theories and observations that I turned into a book. And it was Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, The Modern Woman's Curse. And it was a big time bestseller at the time because chronic fatigue, people didn't know what it was. And they weren't getting any answers. And a lot of it, doctors, unfortunately, said it's all emotional, mental health issues. And I really pushed back on that that it was adrenals, too much cortisol. At the time, nobody talked about cortisol. I talked about leaky gut. Anyway, listen to the conclusions of, or the comparison between AIDS and chronic fatigue syndrome. They had a lot of similarities, according to the study. They had study on CFS and AIDS. Here's what they had. Candida overgrowth. Yeah. Leaky gut. Fungal overgrowth. Yep. The invasion of the Third Army. The invasion at the southern border between your gut and your blood. How does fungus or yeast get into your blood? How does an overgrowth take place? And here's what they said. Antibiotic use. Both in chronic fatigue syndrome and AIDS. It was the primary cause, according to the study. And where have you heard that before? Okay? And yeast, it's a stealth pathogen. Okay? Once it gets into your bloodstream, it goes everywhere. It'll go into your brain, and it carries. It's a carrier. We've talked about this over the years. It carries heavy metals like mercury, lead, cadmium. And the worst thing for yeast, okay? So the start of it has two causes, in my opinion. Not only antibiotic use, but the feeding of the candida. Okay, when I say yeast, candida albicans. It needs to be fed. It's like cancer. It needs sugar. And that's where the expression came out of, don't feed the bears. What did I mean by that? Don't feed yeast. Okay? Don't feed yeast. Today, and we talked about this yesterday, they talk a lot about parasites. And you see that really on social media a lot. All cancers are parasites. I'm not convinced about that, by the way. I'm not. I know that is not a fact. But there's others that said all cancers have a fungal, a yeast component to it. I'm more on the side of yeast than I am a parasite, but at the end of the day, it's the same treatment plan to get rid of parasites and to get rid of fungus. And so when they did the study on AIDS and comparing it to chronic fatigue syndrome, they talked about the similarities, okay? And antibiotics, by the way, let me just bring in this little study because it's really important. And you guys know this because I talk about antibiotics, the greatest discovery of the 20th century and the curse of the 21st. We still need antibiotics. They save lives. Hallelujah. And I mean it. Am I against antibiotics? Of course not. You need an antibiotic? You need an antibiotic. You don't want to go sepsis. But it's a double-sided sword. It kills bacteria, but, and this is a big but, it's got a lot of side effects to it. And doctors don't think about that so much. They just haven't been trained to think about the side effects of the antibiotic. They've been told this, don't overdo it. Don't give out antibiotics. Every college of physicians and surgeons has put out an edict on antibiotics. Health Canada put it out. The FDA has put it out. Please, doctors, don't overuse antibiotics because we're creating a monster, which is called C. difficile. We've created a monster, a bacteria that is so resistant now to antibiotics. And every time you use an antibiotic, unfortunately, these pathogens, they develop resistance to it. They got a brain. They cover themselves so that they can survive. You know, and they want to survive. So what do? The antibiotic, they develop a resistance. And that's a big problem in our society today, guys. Huge problem. But they don't talk about this, though they should. When you take an antibiotic, you kill all the good guys with the bad guys. And that changes your microbiome. Let me bring this in and we'll continue to discuss. Babies, okay? On antibiotics in the first 2 years of life. So we talked about the last 2 days, even babies with sugar. What shows up later on in their life in studies. Not good. But antibiotics, okay, in the first 2 years of life, 20% higher risk of obesity. It changes their microbiome. And those bacteria, they communicate with every part of the body, the brain, the skin, the lungs. 20% higher if a baby has taken an antibiotic in the first 2 years of life. 20% higher risk of obesity, 21% higher risk of a learning disability. That's key because, look, there's controversy. You know, they talk about vaccines, and I'm not going to get into the weeds, guys. I'm not going to do that with you, okay? But here's me. And I've been consistent for 30, 40 years now on the side effects of antibiotics and what it does inside the body. And it creates a change in the ecosystem of the microbiome. And what that does, it changes leaky gut, leaky brain. And these kids are canaries in the coal mine. It changes their microbiome, it changes the blood-brain barrier, and I'll tell you, it can have a major effect on cognitive. And I've seen that in my practice, I'm going to say 1,000 times, and I don't think I'm exaggerating. What is a parent? A kid's got an ear infection, screaming. You're doing everything you can, and and the doc, well, you know what? We give them an antibiotic. The problem is, most of the time, those less pus is coming out of their ear. That ear infection is viral. 99% of the time, it's viral. It's not bacterial. The antibiotic does nothing for that. Well, it does something, and it's negative. It destroys the good bacteria. And doctors aren't telling their patients, well, look, make sure you give them a probiotic now to replace the good guys. They don't do that. Not generally. You got a good doctor that does that? Good for you. And give them a high five next time you see them. For me. But that's a big problem in our society. So when they looked at back to, I was on a little rabbit trail, back to the study on AIDS and CFS. They said that's a major consideration in AIDS is this yeast overgrowth, a fungal overgrowth. It's leaky gut, guys. It's the invasion of the Trojan horse, fungus. We all got a little bit of candida, and that never hurts anyone. I mean that. But when it gets into your bloodstream and it proliferates, and it does that because of antibiotics have destroyed the border, the southern border, and then the northern border gets compromised, you got lots of problems. Houston, you got a problem. And I've been consistent. I wrote a book about it. Imagine way back when, talking about chronic fatigue and leaky gut and fungus. And a lot of time, and this is, by the way, with chronic fatigue, what I wrote back in the 80s and 90s was, it was antibiotics, guys, and exposure to mold. That was a big one. Exposure to mold. And look, you can put two people in the same room. Okay? In the same room that's got mold. And one gets deathly ill, and the other one, they don't seem to be bothered by it. But like I said, the canary in the coal mine, the chronic fatigue syndrome patient with leaky gut, they get exposed to mold, and mold is very toxic. Black mold is extremely toxic. And people don't realize they've been exposed to mold. In my practice, of course, this is what I wrote in my book. I wrote in there that a lot of people have been exposed to mold and they don't even think about it. I remember in my hometown getting schools, because I had patients, they come in very unwell, getting schools condemned, getting buildings where office workers were getting sick, getting that building condemned. Because the union, I had patients say, go to your union and have your place, a workplace, tested. And how many homes with mold? And like I said, some people, oh, you got mold in your bathroom, and it don't bother them. They don't even think about it. And then there's the canary in the coal mine, the people with the fragile system, and boom, makes them very ill. It's a big factor. So this is what we saw, okay? In CFS, and they're saying in AIDS, okay, so there's similarities. Candida overgrowth due to antibiotics and high sugar diet, bad combo. Heavy metals. Yeah, well, yeast carries heavy metals. Well, you and I are always exposed to heavy metals, guys. You think you're going to get away from mercury, lead, and cadmium? It's like microplastics. You can't get away from them. They're everywhere. We live in a mercury society, whether we like it or not. we really do. But again, I'm big on you having a very, very powerful immune system. Take care of what you can take care of. Get rid of the leaky gut. Don't feed the yeast. Don't feed it. If you don't feed yeast and you take a probiotic with oil of oregano. And by the way, someone asked this morning, I saw it. They might have asked yesterday, but I saw it this morning. Dr. Martin, what about parasites? How do you get rid of that? The same way you get rid of yeast. Don't feed it. Parasites love sugar. They're teenagers. They're kids. They're like yeast. Don't feed it. One, probiotic. There are certain strains of probiotics that are very antiparasitic. Oil of oregano is antifungal, antiparasitic. And what have I taught at this Doctors In podcast for years and years and years and years? Keep your liver clean. Fat loves toxins. Fatty liver loves toxins. Plus, if you have a fatty liver, you can't even detoxify properly because you're not making enough glutathione. Interesting study, isn't it? The comparisons of chronic fatigue syndrome and AIDS. What did they have in common? Yeah, I liked it. I flagged it. Okay. Let me see. Where are we here? Just got to check on... Because sometimes time runs away and I forget. This is one. Vitamin C adding to chemotherapy. 2024 study. I just read it. I don't know where it was hidden. Not that I haven't talked about this before, but they're showing, okay, in stage 4, which is babaylo, usually, stage 4 cancer, metastatic pancreatic cancer. So they finally did a study using the same chemo, okay, but adding with the patient, adding vitamin C IVs to the chemo. And guys, this is what I really like about vitamin C, not the coffee, okay? The real vitamin C is coffee, okay? The other vitamin C I like, not in small doses. It's not that I don't like it. It's just, look, we put vitamin C in Navital. Because one thing that was studied with pine bark, when you add pine bark to vitamin C, the vitamin C is more bioavailable. It works better. I like that study. I saw that 30 years ago. And that's why we add vitamin C to Navital. Anyway, but you guys know me. The real vitamin C is coffee because it's much more powerful than the ascorbic acid. Not that, I'm not saying can't have ascorbic acid. I'm just telling you the facts. Coffee is more powerful than that. It has all the proanthocyanins and all the antioxidants and yada, yada, yada that vitamin C doesn't have. And I always reminded my listeners who used to go crazy when I talked like that, especially in my early radio days. Like, Dr. Martin. Well, I said, let me tell you the story of Jacques Cartier. Who? Well, he named Canada, okay? And 25 of his men died of scurvy, which is a lack of vitamin C. Okay, so was he given oranges when he ended up on the banks of the St. Lawrence River in 16 whatever? Did they give him oranges? Nope. You know what they gave him? A tea with pine bark. What? Well, obviously, it must have had some vitamin C in it, right? That's coffee, guys. Okay? It's got everything in it. They gave him a tea. The natives gave him a tea. And Jacques Cartier actually wrote this in his annals. Oh, we all got the 25 died, but he said the rest of us, as soon as we start drinking this tea with pine bark extract, well, he didn't say pine bark extract, he said pine bark. They made a tea with the bark. And he said, we all got better. We never felt better in our lives. That's the discovery of pine bark extract. It came right from there. And I can tell you, in 1911, when my grandfather founded the Martin Clinic, he was light years ahead of his time. He was using all these barks, including pine bark, and making up these potions and, for his patients. How many medications do you think was available in those days, in 1911? They used natural product, including aspirin from a willow bark. That's where it comes from. Right? Anyway, why did I talk about that? Oh, because vitamin C, I like this part, guys. In cancer treatment, because people have asked me for years, Doc, what would you do if you had cancer? Well, I'd be taking vitamin C injected in an IV, because you need lots of it to be effective against cancer. Do you think that'll ever come mainstream, Dr. Martin? Because that's what I get asked. I don't know. I wouldn't hold my breath. I don't think so, even though this study was good. It added survival increase. This is stage 4, metastatic. Metastatic means it's spread already, pancreatic cancer. It means you've been given a ticket out of this world, right? And it increased their survival by 16 months. It didn't cure them, but it increased their survival. I seen this 35, 40 years ago, guys. The use of vitamin C in IV and its effectiveness, okay? And its effectiveness. So, the moral of the story is, if you hear of anybody that gets cancer, if they can, get vitamin C injections, IVs. I highly recommend that. And the other takeaway is vitamin C is better taken in coffee if you're going to take it orally. Coffee's better for you. I doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on that. You can't get me off of it because I've seen the effects of vitamin C, just orally vitamin C. It's all right. I like it, but it's not coffee. And vitamin C with pine bark, unreal. The difference in the bioavailability. It's been tested. Okay. Tomorrow afternoon, okay? 99.9% sure. If it changes, I'll let you know in ahead of time, okay? But I think it's going to be an afternoon session. That's what it's looking like. So that's tomorrow afternoon, okay? Friday is what? Q&A, okay? So Q&A, Friday. You like Friday Q&A? I do. I have nothing but fun on Fridays, okay? The only stress I get on Fridays is I get so many questions sometimes that I go, oh, I'm not going to be able to finish, and we got to do Q&A Monday. But that's all right. Was it last week we had to do Q&A Friday, Monday, and Tuesday? How do you like that? Okay, guys. We love you. Talk to you soon.